This is a fail of the politicians. This is a failure of the leaders. It is the job of a leader to inspire all of the people to have trust in him, not just some of the people, not just the people he likes, not just the people on his party or the people he wants. It is his job as a leader to have every single person in the country believe.
Enjoy the video and subscribe for more.
Why did you race to spread such woeful disinformation, given the massive following you have, and encourage people to take action against a caricature and description of who had perpetrated this, which was simply untrue?
Well, firstly, I'll start by saying I didn't know Nigel Farage said those things about me, which is a shame because I'm actually a fan of him. I think he's trying to do the right thing. I also understand in his political sphere, sometimes he has to hang other people out to dry to save himself because he's getting heat also. Secondly, I'll argue with you about the fact that everything I said was untrue. I think the only thing I said that was untrue is that perhaps he was undocumented. It was a 17-year-old male. It was a migrant. He did kill little girls. And advocating for people to stand outside and make it clear that they're unhappy with what happened is not a dangerous ideology. We live in a democracy where we have the right to protest and the right to make it clear when our voices are not heard. I recently protested against the Olympic ceremony outside the French embassy. I'm not sure if you saw it, complaining about how they depicted Jesus Christ, because I was unhappy with what I saw. And I think that when people feel like they have a voice, they're not likely to get violent. And the problem we have now is that people do not have a voice, which is why we're seeing rioting, which is why we're seeing looting, because people do not feel like there's a political solution any longer. And what I was trying to do is encourage people to stand up and make their voice heard in a peaceful way to avoid violence. Because when people feel like they're not heard, violence is always the end result.
Yeah, but you've actually had the complete opposite effect. And you know the massive following that you have and the influence that you can wield. And by spreading, I mean, again, you've repeated the fact this kid who has obviously now been charged with very serious crimes, including killing these 3 girls, was a migrant. He wasn't a migrant. He was born in Wales. His parents were legal immigrants from Rwanda. So he's not a migrant. He's somebody born in Wales, born in the United Kingdom.
Well, first things first, it's unfair for you to say that I've had an opposite effect. What I did was point out the facts of the situation, that a 17-year-old male killed little girls. If I point out the facts of the situation, that the sky is blue, and then people go and decide to riot because I've said those things, does not mean those things are not true. That's the first thing. Secondly, here's where we have the dichotomy of the UK, and I actually think this conversation is going to be one of the most important and potent conversations of modern times, especially as this issue is not going to be solved anytime soon, Piers. The problem we have now in the UK is that we have a certain subsect of the population who believe because he was born in Cardiff, he is a Welsh man. And we have another subsect of the population who believe that even if he was born in Cardiff, he is not Welsh. I'm currently in Romania. I'm an American and British citizen. The woman who I have a child with is Italian. The child was born in Romania. The Romanians do not consider that child Romanian, not by their view of the world. If I had a child in China, they would not consider that kid Chinese. They would look at the face shape of the child and say that's not a Chinese child. If I had a black child in Russia, they would not consider that child Russian. In the West, in the democracies, we do. But we have a problem because you now have you have a dichotomy of ideas, you have 2 different camps, and the camp that believe that this person perhaps isn't even Welsh in the first place are also the camp which are being suppressed and not allowed to speak and are being smeared and labeled as far right for having genuine concerns. And that is why things are getting exasperated and out of control. What we need is conversation, and what we need is dialect. You cannot have a multicultural democracy and ignore the concerns of one particular subsect of that culture, especially when it's the native culture, and expect everything to be fine forever. There's a lot of people who have a point of view. They didn't feel like they had a political solution anymore. And this is what's happening. The reason this dichotomy exists, Piers, please understand, if they are sitting there and they're accepting that this is a Welsh man, but now they're starting to get concerned for the safety of their children, and they don't feel like there's any kind of political solution, well, then they're going to come to the very simple and obvious conclusion that they'd rather not have anyone from anywhere else in their country to avoid these things happening again because they don't feel like there's any other political solution. This is a fail of the politicians. This is a failure of the leaders. It is the job of a leader to inspire all of the people to have trust in him, not just some of the people, not just the people he likes, not just the people on his party or the people he wants. It is his job as a leader to have every single person in the country believe that he cares about the issue and he's doing something actively to fix it. Instead, what Keir did was stand up and do the absolute opposite. Shut down any legitimate concerns, tell people they don't have a voice, tell people nothing's going to change, is going to stay exactly the way it is. And let me tell you something. I want to make this very clear. There's a lot of people in the world who would rather go to jail and have a warm bed and 3 square meals a day than watch their children die. There's a lot of people who would rather go to jail than watch their society collapse in real time around them. There's a lot of people who would really rather go to jail than feel unsafe to walk the street at night ever again. These are people who have lived in the same place for a very long time. They have a vested interest in this geographical location. And without political solutions being offered, I don't know how hubristic you must be to sit and expect anything other than what we've seen. This is a failure of leadership. And that's what's so disappointing about it.
Right. So here's my response to what you've just said. First of all Keir Starmer has said, as far as I can see, is that he is going to bring the full force of the law against people who committed acts of violence. And the violence that was perpetrated
he called them
in
far right.
Yeah, well, there were far-right thugs who were leading this, and they were attacking mosques. They were chanting anti-Muslim chants, and they were doing this because
there
people
was
had put
a
out
black
there.
person
Hang
in the
on,
crowd. Would you say
you've
the
had
crowd
your
was black
say.
people?
I'm going to have my say now. It was put out falsely on social media that the person who did this was a Muslim. Not just a Muslim, but a Muslim who came in on one of the small boats, part of the very contentious, ongoing issue of the small boat. I'm not saying you did. I'm saying this is what was put out on social media in a series of false posts, which then went viral, right? So he was supposedly a Muslim. Not true. Supposedly came in on a small boat. Not true. Supposedly on an MI6 watch list as a potential terrorist. Not true. None of this was true. And so on the back of that, far-right thugs who led this went up and attacked mosques, and they went and attacked hotels with asylum seekers in there waiting to be processed, and they was trying to set fire to them. Those are acts of despicable violence which were being led by far-right thugs. Now, not everybody involved in all these protests is a far-right thug. Some of them will be ordinary members of the public trying to legitimately protest peacefully. I completely accept it. But the ones who were leading it, who were committing the acts of violence and making the threats against the Muslim community, were doing so because they have been completely misled about who had done this. It was not a Muslim. It was not an illegal immigrant. It was not somebody on the MI6 watch list. It was none of those things. Now, you posted on July the 30th, the day after the killing, and I feel particularly incensed, by the way, that the deaths of these 3 young girls have been hijacked in such a reprehensible manner to attack Muslims when a Muslim had nothing to do with it, right? You put this on July the 30th, you posted a picture saying, this is the man from Cardiff. We're looking at this picture now. That murdered the little girl, straight off a boat, you said. Really? He wasn't straight off a boat, because this wasn't the person who perpetrated the crimes. You got 4.3 million views for this. And a community notes clarified, this is not the man that killed, attacked the children and adults in Southport. This image is of Kasonga Mabulu, who was arrested in Ireland in 2023 for a random knife attack at Dublin Airport. So again, 24 hours later, you're posting more.
Okay.
You're posting more. No, you're posting
apologies.
complete disinformation.
I'm sorry,
it's not okay.
Sir.
It's not okay.
Oh, no,
it
Piers,
was not the man.
Did I get the wrong stabber? Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, you did.
Piers Morgan, of
Yeah,
course.
you
I
did.
got the wrong stabber.
Yeah, you did.
And he certainly looked very Welsh to me. Let me make this clear. I'm a Muslim, and I think anybody who attacked a mosque is going to have to deal with God. I'm not worried about the full force of the law. They should worry about God itself. But I also want to make something very clear to all the people at home, and clear to you, that most of the white people are very frustrated, and they're finding an enemy amongst themselves to take it out on. I think that the white people on these streets have a lot more in common with the brown people on these streets than they do with the politicians, because that's the problem we have here. Keir did not just only say they're going to face the full force of the law. He told everybody with a point of view, everybody who's concerned about the safety of their children, that they are extremists. And that is the most aggravating language you can possibly choose when people finally have had enough of not feeling safe on their own streets any longer. We have people who cannot afford to pay their bills watching migrants arrive who are now being held up in hotels at the taxpayers' expense for indefinite periods of time. We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Nobody voted for it. Nobody wants it. And everybody's struggling to pay their bills. Energy prices are through the roof. Inflation is through the roof. Now they no longer feel safe on their streets. They don't want to put their daughters outside to play. The police won't protect them. The police won't turn up for most crimes unless it's something you say bad on Facebook. And when they look for a political solution, they're ignored. What kind of powder keg are we building here through incompetent leadership in the UK? This is nothing but a leadership failure. There's not a country in the world where leadership could fail this spectacularly and see any
Andrew,
different result.
All right. But once again, Andrew, you are spouting nonsense in what you've just said. Not all of it, but some of it is nonsense. You say, for example, nobody voted for the UK to support Ukraine. We've literally just voted Keir Starmer in the United Kingdom with a landslide majority, and he made it crystal clear before that election that he would be contributing billions of our pounds to help the people of Ukraine thwart a Russian dictator. Well, you may laugh, but you just literally said the complete opposite. So we did actually vote for a leader and a party that was completely committed to dedicating billions of pounds of taxpayer money to helping people in Ukraine defeat Vladimir Putin. So that, again, is a complete untruth that you've just espoused.
I'm sure the people who are protesting up there in the north of England who can't afford to pay their bills, who are watching migrants live for free in hotels, who don't feel safe at night because the police don't have enough resources to turn up and respond to crime, are very happy that we're sending money to Ukraine. You're completely right. Yeah, the fact he only had 20% of the populist vote has nothing to do with it. And the fact that every single party will send money to Ukraine because we live in a uni-party system which is corrupt to the core in the first place. That's the reason why no matter who you vote for, the migrants keep coming. And no matter who you vote for, the money keeps getting siphoned out of the tax base and sent to Ukraine. That's the truth of it, is that most people are starting to realize and wake up from the matrix and understand there are no political solutions because it's all a scam and it's all a lie. What we need is people to understand at home that we have to think outside the box and vote for somebody who's not part of this two-party, uni-party insanity, which is why I was a fan of Nigel Farage. Even if he sells me down the river, even if he says I'm a bad person, that's his prerogative and that's his decision to make. I still believe he's the best choice as a leader for the UK.
Well, Nigel Farage is not just... Well, hang on. Nigel Farage has literally just chucked you under a monumental bus. He's gone on LBC radio and he said the reason that he himself was promoting complete nonsense about the person who committed these heinous crimes was because of people like you. Andrew Tate, he names you. He says that you were responsible for spinning disinformation which he was dumb enough to believe.
Well, I never said he was a Muslim. I never said he was a Syrian. I never said he was on the MI6 watch list. The only thing I could have got incorrect is that he was an undocumented migrant. And if Nigel Farage has done that, that's his decision. He'll have to live with his conscience. I'm not here to tell him how to think. I'm also man enough to be understanding that not everybody has to like me all of the time for me to agree with some of the things they say. The biggest problem we have in the world today is everybody's so emotional. Everybody's so upset all the time that if somebody says something bad about them, they pretend that person's completely bad. Nobody is completely bad. Nobody is completely evil. Everybody loves their children. Everybody wants to live in peace. A lot of people talk about the idea of war, but let me promise you, Piers, I'm a person who's had a very varied life. When you see people with machetes outside your door threatening you and the police aren't answering the phone anymore, you don't want war. The Muslims want peace. The white natives of the UK, the Christians want peace. Everybody wants peace. But when you have a political class which refuse to listen to absolutely anybody, do whatever they want, grind everyone into poverty irregardless, then you're going to have some sort of uprising. And it's unfortunate that the poor people, and I call them poor, I mean the average person, is turning on the average person as opposed to turning on the rich elites who are just plundering the country. That's the truth of what's happening here.
Well, what is...
You watched my video. We played it. Yeah, the only thing I had incorrect was that he was undocumented. That's the only thing you could perhaps say he was incorrect. The London stabbing, Piers. The London bridge attack, he was born in Pakistan. We want to sit here and talk about how a large contingent of the people committing terror attacks in the UK and the most heinous crimes are not natively English people. And when we need to sit here and address this without being called racist, without being called far right, I'm a mixed race Muslim and I'm pointing out this very obvious truth. If we're not going to be able to point out the truth, what do you expect besides anger?
Well, I mean, the sheer brass neck, frankly, Andrew, of you lecturing me about the truth when you've spent the last week spewing complete fake news bullshit is breathtaking, right? And also, I would say you've also been spewing stuff that is blatantly racist. On the 1st of August, you posted a cartoon saying, typical man from Cardiff. Let's look at that cartoon. This has had 11 million views.
Yeah, it's a taxpayer, it's a migrant arriving on the boat with taxpayers' money, and I think a lot of people are upset about that. I want to make something clear because I'm a Muslim myself.
When you say typical man from Cardiff, when you say typical, hang on, when you say typical man from Cardiff, you are again telling people that in your estimation, the person that committed this came in as an illegal migrant on a boat. That is not true. None of that is true.
Well, what I'm actually doing, Piers, because you may not be aware of this because you're part of the legacy media machine, which is why you defended Israel so heavily.
I'm on YouTube.
You're not allowed to have your own opinion.
I'm on YouTube.
You're not allowed
on legacy media.
You're part of the legacy media machine. YouTube. And you're not allowed to have your own opinion. But let me explain something
Every word of this will go up, as you know.
Perfect. I understand exactly how the media machine works. The fact that they kept highlighting that he's from Cardiff and showing pictures of him as a child, as opposed to showing pictures of him as the large, barbaric man he was, which stabbed those little girls, was a deliberate PR spin by the propaganda arm of the British government to try and subvert and subdue the UK populace because they knew everybody would be outraged by what they saw. That's why every picture of him is he's a kid.
Honestly,
they keep saying he's from Cardiff. This was set up on purpose. Now, the point I was making is as follows.
He was literally
The average
born
man
in
from
Cardiff. The
Do you think
Matrix
that makes
didn't
him Welsh?
pretend he was born in Cardiff. You've been posting cartoons of people coming in illegally, armed on little boats, because you want people to think that the person that did this was that person. But he wasn't.
You cut out there, Pierce. I think I understood you. I'm a Muslim myself, so there's no reason why I want any kind of violence against Muslims. That's the first thing that's very clear. And I want to make something else very clear. I'm actually in a quite unique scenario as a Muslim revert, half black, half white. I've had both sides of this dichotomy try and recruit me, perhaps. I can't be taught to hate anybody. There's no Muslim alive who can teach me to hate anybody, and there's no white man alive who can teach me to hate anybody. There's no hate in my heart, there's only love. But when you have love, you have protectiveness. And you have to feel a protectiveness for the things you care about. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. We call people hateful all the time for having a point of view, especially when they get out on the street because they feel like they need to express it. A lot of these people were not hateful. A lot of these people were full of love, and they were full of concern.